energy of the state of hockey. Minnesota Wild Hockey is back at Grand Casino Arena. Don't miss the speed, the hits, the roar of the crowd. You can get your tickets now. Wild.com/tickets. Wild.com/tickets.
Free. It's spun loose. Faber to open ice. It's Kaprizov at the red line. A backhanded shot. He scores! Move over Marion. The new franchise leader in career goals is Kirill Kaprizov. It's into the empty net for number 220. And the Wild in front 5-1 late in the third.
All we do, well, at least most recently, is win. Russo Radio, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Can you tell me whether the aforementioned Kirill Kaprizov has demanded that Bill Guerin make one more significant deal before tomorrow afternoon's trade deadline?
I don't think he's demanded that, but I think he would obviously be happy with that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that Quinn Hughes coming here has changed everything about this franchise and has Kirill really excited about the future as well. And sure, I mean, there's no doubt that and they're on a plane now. But trust me, I know that Bill's phone is working on that plane because I've texted with him a couple times in the last hour. But there's no doubt by tomorrow's noon deadline, at least out here at 2:00
Central, right? Yep.
Bill continues to look for some sort of center. But if I had to put a wager on it right now, I just still think that maybe this big move that he wants to make has to wait till the summer.
To the summer, yeah.
Unless it's like a Robert Thomas or something like that. I just think that they have some diminishing assets right now just because they've traded so many in the last couple of years. And I think that they know that they have a precious few left that they could use to swing that big trade. And, I think they even have to decide, is it worth doing that for Robert Thomas or is it worth waiting until the summer or even into next season to try to make that move? As we saw with Quinn Hughes, huge trades could happen at any time. And if you throw away your precious few assets that you have left now on a Vincent Trocheck or even a Robert Thomas, who I love as a player, now all of a sudden if a significant player becomes available this summer, like a Jack Hughes or a Nico Hischier or Austin Matthews even or a Brady Tkachuk, now you're probably out of it because they don't have a lot of big players left.
We were talking about this, I think earlier this week or maybe late last week. In fact, you guys had, I think, a report, was it from LeBrun, about maybe indicating the possibility that the Trocheck would be willing to come to a place like Minnesota. And again, I think he ended up denying it. But the point of it was...
that's Stamkos.
Stamkos, that's right. It was Stamkos. I apologize. Yep. The point, though, for me is this, that I don't think, as much as we like to consider ourselves a state of hockey, I don't think that there was anywhere near as much chance that good players would want to come here, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's what has there's this sense that a new era has been ushered in, largely with the Minnesota move. That this makes sense, even if there's no playoff equity yet established. That people are going, no, something's happening here. There's a chance I can be a part of something pretty substantial in the postseason. Can you speak to that?
I completely agree. I think that is exactly what's going on now. Is this isn't a new era right now with this franchise, and a lot of it has to do with when you add players like Quinn Hughes, and then you have a Matt Boldy, you have a Brock Faber, and then they go to the Olympics and they're around all those great American players, and they're telling them how great it is in Minnesota. I think that stuff starts to get word of mouth. It's how this franchise treats players too. They from where they stay to how they fly to how they eat to the way their families are taken care of when they're acquired here or come here. It just, to me, this has become a really first-class destination franchise, and Quinn is a big reason for that, not just for his play, but for how much they've treated him and how much he already loves it here. And I've talked to a couple of those players here in the last couple of weeks, being in Milan, and they just go on and on about all the good things that Quinn says about Minnesota. So I think that is part of it. When you have a hockey nerd, and first of all, the one thing that Steven Stamkos denied is not that he wouldn't want to come to Minnesota or want to come to Minnesota. It's more that he wants to leave Nashville.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
If he were to leave Nashville, I have also confirmed that Minnesota is on his very short list. And when you have hockey savants like Steven Stamkos sitting there and looking at the Wild as being a team that could be a true contender, I think that says a lot because, Joe Smith, my colleague at The Athletic, he covered Stamkos for years in Tampa Bay. And Joe will be the first to tell you that guy is just absolutely a hockey, breathes, lives, everything about hockey. I mean, he's one of those few guys that can remember. You could bring up any goal of his in his entire career, and he's going to be able to tell you every detail. He's sick like that. And when he sits there and actually is putting the Wild on a list of 3 teams, that tells you that people around the league are starting to, one, realize how players are treated here, but 2, that this team actually has the potential of making some noise, and being a true contender.
Let me do a very quick breaking news sounder. I'm going to find it. Here it is. Overtime, it's over. Second Class AA quarterfinal game, Minnesota State High School boys tournament. Rosemount 3, Grand Rapids 2. Rosemount scores fairly early into the overtime, so they advance. After a late goal by Grand Rapids had tied it up, right? Grand Rapids had tied it up in the final 30 seconds of regulation. Is that correct?
Yeah, like 28. Yeah.
28 seconds, 28.9 seconds to go. But Rosemount does not wallow in its misery, and they come out and get the victory in OT. I mentioned earlier.
Aaron Sickman will be very, very happy about that, by the way, Dan. As you know, he's from Rosemount. Good
point. That's a really good point. Well, I mentioned this earlier, I'm probably stroking Louis' ego too much. It's now year 2 without him at the tournament, and I'm still not used. I'm less used to it this year than I was last year. It's very odd to me. I don't exactly know why, but it just feels like the longer he's not in it, the more it's bugging me that he's still not in it, even after 60 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you said that. I was actually talking to Louis. We have a big dinner coming up, our annual GM's meetings dinner down in Florida next week.
Nice.
So we were setting up plans there. But I said the same thing. It's just so weird that he's not up here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Vegas, but
right,
he's not up in Minnesota right now. It just doesn't feel right. He is the tournament, and so that stinks.
Wild don't need to do something stupid and desperate, writes one texter. This is let me check the name here. That's from Brandt. Make a big move this offseason if you can, and then lock up Hughes as well. Maybe fans are, maybe they're being sensible. I mean, because again, I got a sense from a lot of fans like, hey man, we're hot now. Let's one more move. Let's do it. But maybe there are more sensible fans than I thought out there saying you got to have a partner and you got to have the goods, and you can't do something that you're going to regret for the next 3 years, even if they're clearly acting like we are trying to go for something right now.
Yeah, I was flying out here this morning, and we got off the ground, and I started texting a bunch of people in the league, and the one thing that I found out is that the Wild have basically pulled themselves out of the Vincent Trocheck sweepstakes because the price is just too rich for their blood, and I think that almost shows you that Bill is trying to be sensible here, and is realizing that he's traded away a ton of assets in the last couple of years, understandably, right? You get the Quinn Hughes, and you give up 4 probably that you could say their best assets in the organization, right? A first-round pick and 3 equivalent first-round players. And you do that, and now all of a sudden you look at some of the athletes you have in terms of assets, and there's just not a lot. And so if you start throwing them away now on a Vincent Trocheck deal, or even Robert Thomas, who is a true number 1 center. Now, if a Jack Hughes became available this summer, and it takes you out of that. So I think for him to pull out of the Trocheck deal, that either just means the Rangers aren't interested in, probably Charlie Stramel at first and maybe another prospect, or he just wants to save those for potentially other moves. Jesper Wallstedt's another name right now that, whether it's now or it's this summer or into next season, I think he realizes that he's probably at some point going to have to use him to go get that true number 1 center. And so I do think that with the cap going up in the next couple of years, and the prospects sort of, being diminished right now, I think that he's starting to, come up with ways that he can go out and get assets to bring into this organization that are top players, and he's going to use those type of guys to parlay it into it, because the window is right now for this team to go out and win.
Is it possible that the price comes down before the deadline? Because it's always a poker game. It's always a game of, trying to set expectations and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only thing, though, is that with Trocheck, he's not a pending free agent. So if you're the Rangers and you've got a guy that a lot of teams covet, but you're not getting the price that you want now, you hold on to him because he's got 3 years left on his deal, and maybe it's a summer move or maybe it's into next trade deadline. The price probably isn't coming down for him. So I get what Chris Drury is doing here. But no doubt, I mean, when the Wild are making it known out there that they're sort of backing off this, it's probably because they also want it out there in the public eye to get their attention as well, and maybe they do come down. Or maybe, look, I mean, maybe Chris Drury just isn't enamored with the package that the Wild are putting forth, and that even if the price came down, they can't be in it. When you're offering Charlie Stramel in a first, I still, as good of a season as Charlie Stramel had, I'm sure there's still doubters out there. Mm-hmm. Maybe just the Rangers, that doesn't intrigue them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But right now, from everything I'm hearing, it doesn't look like the Wild are going to be in on Trocheck anymore.
All right, tell me about the. I was off yesterday, so I don't know how much this came up in the show when Guardsy was hosting. But what about the McCarron acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because he has had some unbelievable run-ins with Wild players over the last 4 or 5 years. He's been in the league for 9, started with Montreal, and then wound up in Nashville, and he's a 6'6" behemoth. I mean, he's so gigantic that a couple years ago it was one of the most, one of the scarier incidents that I've ever covered. But Matt Dumba tried to hit him in the open ice with about 3 or 4 minutes left in the game, and the sound of that check was scary in Nashville. Like, you could hear it, and they brought Matt back to the hotel, and Matt thought he was dying, and they had to rush him to the hospital. Turned out he had a punctured lung, a dislocated rib that punctured his lung, and another broken rib, and that's just from hitting the guy. He hitting him, not being hit. So he's a monster. He's gotten into fights with Middleton. He's gotten into a fight with Foligno. He got into it with Zuccarello last year and this year. And there's a full foot we're talking a foot disadvantage in height between Zuccarello and McCarron. And they had apparently, I wasn't in the locker room today, but they had apparently a funny back and forth with the media. And McCarron said that there was an incident in December where McCarron completely faked an injury and when actually created a delay in a game for like about 5 minutes as the refs looked at this, because Zuccarello slashed him and he faked it like he broke his hand, and then went to the locker room, came back, they rescinded the major, all that stuff. So Zuccarello went up to him today and asked how his hand was and shook it really hard and all that. So, I mean, the one thing, is we know covering this league and being around this league is usually the biggest, SOBs on the ice are like the nicest guys in the locker room, and clearly Nashville was gutted to lose him, and he comes here, and the whole point is to obviously get some piss and vinegar in the playoffs, but they haven't been overly excited about Nico Sturm's game this year. His face-off percentage is good, but on his weak side draws, he just has not been very good, and so they're now putting a right shot on his line that can win a lot of draws as well and take the strong side face-off. So I think that's the big reason for it. Obviously, his size and his physicality is a Bill Guerin type of player, and I know that Wild players are happy that they don't have to play him anymore.
When Louis was on Tuesday, I got a text from a listener asking for his opinion about. Again, this is a couple days ago, but the current state of the goaltending. That the listener felt like he has seen maybe the goaltending come back to the pack a little bit, and he's obviously a guy with great aspirations, right? So you're grading now on a much tougher curve, because you're on a curve now, I think, among fans to say, we want to make a run right now. We don't want to wait. Yeah. We don't want to just be happy getting out of the first round. We want to keep going. How would you assess the goaltending right now?
Well, Gustafson's been fantastic since the Olympics, and it was concerning at the Olympics when he not only lost his job, but wasn't even backing up. the last couple of games because he was so, off at the beginning of the tournament. But since he's been back, I mean, you look at the Colorado game, you look at the St. Louis game, which was, he gave up a couple goals, but they were not his fault. And then last game, he fired a gem, I thought. So he's played 3 great games. Wallstedt, I'm very concerned about. He has not been good for a long time now. And now when you look at a season as a whole, you look at that November run that he had as being an absolute masterpiece, but really October, very mediocre. December, the second half especially, very mediocre. Incredibly mediocre in January and hasn't been so far good since. So I'm a little concerned with him. I think this is another reason why the Wild are actually really being aggressive on potentially moving him, whether it's now or this summer, because I think that they're not completely sold right now on him. But look, if, in the playoffs, if the Wild are going to go where they hope to go, Gus is going to have to be the guy. And for the most part, Gustafsson has had not only a really good season, but even on the games where he's off, they're scoring enough goals where he's winning more than he's losing by a long shot, especially at home, where he's, had one regulation loss since October 30th. So, I'm not as concerned about it as some people, but if something happened to Gus, I'd be very concerned.
Did we make another deal? We made another deal since McCarron, correct?
Yeah. Jeff Petrie, who's a long-time NHLer, has been around for 16 years.
What's this about?
Has been on several teams, 38 years old. They had him as essentially an eighth defenseman. So what that tells me is that maybe David Spacek or David Juracek is in play tomorrow or later today, or it just means that they just don't have the faith in Juracek to be their extra right shot D if something were going to happen to Faber or Spurgeon or Bogosian down the stretch or in the playoffs. So they added Petrie, just as sort of a free pickup. Somebody that's played a ton of games in the NHL, more than 1,000. But he apparently is understanding that he's probably coming here to be a scratch most nights. And so they got him essentially for free, a 7th-round pick, which, as we all know, is really nothing.
Texts are just pouring into the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. Don't forget, by the way, Mitch Lawrence, NBA talk at 4:30. And we'll chat with Ricky Foggy on the death of his former college coach, Lou Holtz, at 5:30 as well, the former Gopher. Question for Russo from the texters. Can Charlie Stramel have an impact on this season? Good faceoff guy, big body, power play, etc.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously having a great year for Michigan State. And if, the hope is that he's going to go to the Frozen Four, and that if the Wild got him, it would only be for the last couple games. But you know how, look, Brock Faber was an absolute aberration. I mean, for him to come in and be as good as he was, and especially in that playoff series against Dallas, there's not a lot of people like him. So let's put it this way, I don't think that the Wild are just going to back out of trades tomorrow because they have Stramel coming. I think to just assume that he's going to be able to step in and take somebody's job and play in the playoffs is probably not something that they're looking at. But he's had a heck of a year, and he's playing on an incredibly good Michigan State team that plays the Gophers this weekend, by the way. So if you're a fan of the Wild and want to see Stramel up close and personal, go check out the Gophers. But I just don't think that it's not Bill Guerin's style to just say they're going to throw him in the lineup. I know we've seen it with Boyum. That was also kind of a special case. But look, if he came here and his size and they felt like he was ready, they could throw him in. But I don't think it's something that they're just planning on not doing anything now because they have Stramel coming.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, you'd say, well, they shouldn't. If they need that much at this point, then they're not in a very good position where you're just sort of haphazardly throwing people in.
Yeah.
You like to think the core of the team.
But I can tell you, I talked to Adam Nightingale earlier this season, the coach of the Michigan State Spartans, and he called Stramel the best net front guy he's ever coached in his career. This is somebody that's coached some of the best USA hockey players at the program, and obviously has been coaching college for some time now, and he loves the kid, absolutely loves him. It's the reason why he went into the portal and transferred from Wisconsin to Michigan State to go play for Nightingale again, and it's absolutely flourished. And he's gone from somebody that I think a lot of Wild fans were concerned that he was not going to make it now being a top prospect in this organization, so much so that again, teams are asking about him in potential trades.
One last question, and then from the texters, and I want to get into one other thing with the Russo radio before we wrap it up at the bottom of the hour. Does Russo think the recent trade rumors have in any way gotten inside Wallstedt's head, affecting his play of late?
I don't know, because, I'll be blunt. Go look at his game log. When he found out that he made the Olympics, it's like the day after his game has just taken a turn for the worse. So this has not just been trade rumors. I mean, this has been since late December. His game has not been good enough. And so I don't know. I mean, I would hope that's not the case, because that also means that he's not a very strong-minded individual, and that's not something you want in a goaltender. So, he probably – the one thing I will say is he pays attention to too much. He gets – I mean, I don't want to talk out of turn here, but I've had some conversations with him because he'll get annoyed with tweets and things like that. So, I mean, maybe, I mean, maybe there's something to it. I actually told him, you shouldn't read my Twitter account, No,
it's absolutely true.
That really should.
Yep.
If I was a player, I would never read articles. I would never read the good or bad. I don't care if I have 5 points in a game. Stay even keeled. There's nothing you're going to learn from me that's going to make you a smarter goalie. So maybe that's something to it. I do think that he pays attention a little too much to the outside noise, but I will say this is well in advance of him having his name in the trade talks. But you're right. I mean, this has been a very public thing. And, the reason why it's become so public is not so much that it's coming from the Wild. It's that we're all just using our head here and realizing that they just don't have a lot of assets, and that if they're going to get a true number one center, at some point they have to throw him out there. Like if they were going to trade for Robert Thomas tomorrow, you just know that Wallstedt's got to be in that deal. I mean, it just has to be. So if they're going to get in on Brady Tkachuk this summer, if all of a sudden he wants out, you just know that Wally's going to have to be in that deal. So, with Gus signed till 31 and with a no move for the first 3 years, I just don't know right now if we could say that Wallstedt's, longs to this organization, whether that's tomorrow or this offseason or next year.
What did you learn from being embedded in the Hughes late night media experience?
That I want to work in TV. That'd be fun. Meeting Nicole Kidman and things like that. It'd just be what a cool experience every day to just meet a different celebrity and things like that. But it was fun. I mean, again, this is stuff that doesn't happen to the Minnesota Wild.
No.
And this is why I know that a lot of, not a lot, but, I was getting a lot of tweets from fans really thinking this isn't good. He needs to pay attention to the Wild. It's game 60-something.
Guardsy said the same thing. Roles on this show are reversed. Usually I'm the guy complaining about that, and I'm saying, enjoy it, celebrate it, it's fine, everything will be fine. And Guardsy's like, get back with the team. What's going on here?
Yeah. Guard. To me, a Minnesota Wild player was on SNL. In the history of SNL, NHL players, you've had Wayne Gretzky hosting, and then the Brett Hull, Jack Hughes, and Quinn Hughes. That is it. In the 50-year history of SNL, other than them making fun of Brady Shea's name once. That's it. And then all of a sudden, they're on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and this is, again, when you think about this, it's a Minnesota Wild player. I mean, we're just this, we always think of ourselves as this, hockey diehard area, state of hockey, all that stuff. But the reality is that in the NHL, as much as this has been an incredibly good organization that's had a lot of regular season success and made the playoffs, it's still kind of this forgotten franchise in the National Hockey League where people just almost didn't take it seriously. And part of it's because they don't go on long playoff runs. But now all of a sudden they're on the map.
Yep.
And so that's why Bill Guerin was totally encouraging Quinn to do this. And trust me, I respect it. Quinn was nervous about it because he knows that he needs his rest and to play the way that he wants to play 28 minutes. And I'm just impressed that he did it. That I thought he was really good on both shows. And then he comes back and and has an unbelievable highlight reel goal last game and
No
plays
question.
as good as we've seen him.
Well,
so I just think it's a really cool thing. But it was awesome being in New York and seeing that stuff.
Louis and I talked about the Guerin component because I think you wrote about that too, and I was impressed too because I'm not even sure I would have expected it from Guerin, but I kind of liked it. It's because again, this is a once in a lifetime kind of a thing, right? This ain't going to keep happening every year, every 8 weeks, whatever the case may be. And I kind of like that Guerin said, we'll get everybody back. That's not going to get in the way of this. Play this out. Enjoy the hell out of this. To me, that's mature. I think that's the mature approach to take, believe it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I still remember, what was it, 20 years ago? I remember seeing Guerin on David Letterman, and like this is really cool stuff. And it's one of those things that years and years and years from now, when Quinn's career is over, he's going to look back on as being one of the highlights of his life. And again, it's really like I've gotten lucky and seen a couple of these tapings in my career. And I remember in 2001, I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes of, I went to a Katie Holmes, Dave Matthews Band, Saturday Night Live with some Panthers players and wound up at the after party at the Russian Tea Room. So I've seen some cool things, but to be in that Tonight Show studio and to see how everything's done and all that type of stuff, it's just a fun thing. And then when you look and you got Jack and Quinn out there and the proud parents in the audience, it was neat.
It's good for the game too. Beyond the Wild is absolutely good for the NHL. 100%.
It's a moment right now, and look, I know that obviously the whole politics and stuff with everything that happened after the fact. I mean, there's obviously going to be a divide there, but the reality is that this team went out and won gold at the Olympics, and that's something that should be celebrated. And the fact that Quinn Hughes was such a huge part of that team and is getting celebrated for it, and he plays for the Minnesota Wild, I think it's pretty neat.
Thanks, Russo. We'll chat next week.
Yep,
appreciate
anytime,
you.
Dan. See ya.
Russo Radio with great stuff as always. We are going to shift to some basketball conversation. We have not caught up in a long time with my former colleague, Mitch Lawrence, an outstanding pro basketball reporter, now analyst these days. We'll catch up with him on some Wolves stuff and some league-wide controversies as well. Lots of ground to cover. He is coming up next.
Wolves. The Fan welcomes some great shows to Ledge Amphitheater this year. John Mulaney will be there August 22nd. Blues Traveler and Gin Blossoms September 12th. You can get complete details on all of our upcoming shows on the concert page, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
We switch from the game of hockey to the game of basketball. If you have questions for Mitch Lawrence, Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 646-86. Welcome back to the program. I hope you've been doing pretty well.
I'm doing great. Dan, how you been? All right?
Yeah, we're doing okay here. I think, like a few teams that are good, we're trying to figure out, well, can we be great again, or can we be great enough to at least get as far as the Wolves did have the last 2 years and beyond it? And nationally, my perception is the Wolves are not viewed as a team that is likely to go as far as they did a year ago. I don't know. Can you speak to that? What do you, and you're, of course, you do all kinds of national stuff with Sirius XM. What do you hear?
Well, I think the general feeling throughout the country is this is in the West, there's Oklahoma City, the defending champs who've been all banged up, yet they're still looking like the best of the bunch. Earlier in the year after they got off to that crazy start, and people had them, penciled in for like 73, 74 wins, which was nuts because, the season plays out and stuff happens and people get hurt, but they look like the class right now, but close behind, people are talking about who? Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs and rightfully so. I mean, all of a sudden they're a factor in the West. Yep. And then everybody always talks about, well, if Denver ever gets healthy and gets their act together and gets Aaron Gordon back because Joker is still the best player in the sport. So those three teams are getting more of the talk than Minnesota. I thought Minnesota did themselves a world of good getting Ayo DeSunmo when they did back at the deadline. helps their backcourt.
Definitely.
I was never a Dillingham guy. I didn't think he was going to be a point guard. Their point guard situation, as we know, has not been the best. I mean, that's a guy, DeSunma, who I thought the Houston Rockets should have got. They need a point guard in the worst way. So, no, the Timberwolves are not being talked about because of those other three teams. But you know what? They could still go pretty deep in the playoffs, depending obviously on matchups and how things play out over these last 20, 25 games.
It might be too that maybe this is to their advantage, that they are just sort of, I don't want to say overlooked, but they're not looked at that top level, and you can just sort of go out and play and be perhaps a little bit, under the radar screen.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about. There's been a growing, I think, ongoing debate about Oklahoma City and their approach defensively in some ways and even offensively as it pertains to SGA. And this came up again the other day when Doris Burke kind of went off on a tangent. This was during the Wolves. I think this was during the Wolves-Denver game. And Edwards got called for an offensive foul where he extended his arm. And Doris took that opportunity to say, well, wait a minute. Now, here's where I'm confused, and here's where I think Edwards has a point. That's a play that SGA makes regularly and seems to get away with it. So we need a little bit more consistency in that regard. So where are you on the whole discussion about what's fair on OKC when it comes to the way they are officiated and what you think is just envy and jealousy because they've obviously had such a good run?
Well, last night, I mean, people in New York today are still going ballistic about, getting jobbed by the officials. Look what SGA does. And he gets away with more than Brunson. And he should have had 3 fouls in the first 10 minutes of the game. They didn't call him on a charge, which would have been his third foul. Well, listen, to the victors go the spoils. And as the champion, they were able and have been able to figure out a way to play super aggressively on defense and a lot more physical than other teams maybe can get away with. And then offensively, Mike Brown says that, SGA's fooling people, the referees into, thinking he's getting more contact than he really is.
Right.
A lot of it is sour grapes. I mean, as we know, and you've been around the NBA a long time, baked into the DNA of the NBA is the superstar treatment that we've seen the top players in the sport get. And now it's SGA's turn. Back in the 80s, you could identify Michael Jordan, put him at the top of the list, getting away with certain things. Even Patrick Ewing in New York was getting the benefit of calls when he did his little bunny hop across the lane. So that's part and parcel. It's like tanking. It's always been a part of the NBA. But the crying and the moaning is more this year, I think, and some of it might have to do with there's been a lot of turnover with the officials. You don't have the veterans, the tried and true, year in and year out guys. They've kind of been phased out. You have more younger officials, less experienced. They may be getting fooled more by some of these guys. But I'll tell you this. Everybody who's complaining about SGA or this guy gets away with this or this guy, those teams would love to have those type of players because they know even in the playoffs they might get the benefit of doubt on some calls. So there's a lot of screaming going on in a lot of cities about this. And once again, years ago when we saw what Jordan was doing, you'd report it, you'd write about it. That's one thing. Now it's social media. It's 24/7.
Yes.
So it just lives. It's an entirely different existence. And so, it's a whole different world now. So to his credit, SGA can do some things. But I did actually watch what you're talking about with Doris Burke, and I thought it was an interesting thing that Anthony Edwards, who himself is a top-tier player, he hasn't won an MVP yet, but he might be a notch below SGA in terms of where he ranks in terms of MVP votes. I mean, he's a hell of a player, and for her to make that big distinction, that was pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, it was. My argument to her would have been that the mistake I thought Edwards tends to make is he's not clever about how far he extends the arm. That the ones who do it well, I think, including SGA, because he does do it. I think they're a little more subtle about not extending in enough of an exaggerated fashion that I think it at least becomes easier for the ref to say, you extended, we're going to call it. And again, that's all in the eyes of the beholder. Different people can see different things. But I think that's part of it. I think, is just how sly you are with it.
Yes.
That also, I think, has been baked into the game. It frustrates people, but it doesn't frustrate people if you have that player on your team.
No, that's the player you want to have on your team. Those are the guys. And, we all remember Michael Jordan's famous push-off against Russell in the deciding game in Utah, the 98 finals, where he clearly, later on some of the league officials told the Jazz, he should have been called for an offensive foul. You really think they're going to call an offensive foul in that situation on Michael Jordan? Right? It's not going to happen.
No.
Just like last night, they were not going to nail Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 3 fouls in the first 10 minutes of that game. That's not, that's the way it works. People might say it's unfair, it's this, it's that. That's the way the NBA operates. They want the superstars on the court, and sometimes they'll give those guys a little more leeway. And you're right. You have to be sly. You have to know, you have to know how you can get away with things so that you can fool the refs. It drives other coaches nuts, drives other players nuts, but more power to the teams that have those type of players.
Well, Mitch, the way I look at it is, for years, I have believed in the concept of tanking responsibly. This is called cheating responsibly. But as you say, people do not want to hear about it. They want to say, well, let's just there's an inconsistency to it. Now, I will add that where I was annoyed regarding OKC was the Dort play on Joker, which to me is in a whole other category there, because I thought that was as bad as advertised. He had every right to get up and be as angry as he was. That was a pretty cheap play by a player who also on the defensive end does have a reputation a bit.
He's not getting away with that. Listen, it's not like they were protecting Jokic. That obviously he went after his knee, which is a vulnerable thing. He had the injury. So, he can't get away with that. And that you shouldn't, that shouldn't happen. And clearly, whether it's Lou Dort or other guys who play with the real edge physically, he crossed the line. And when you cross the line, especially against a top-tier player, and then, a multi-winning MVP, you're going to get nailed for it. And that's and you got to pay the price. So, Dort made that mistake. He won't probably make it again. But, it was an amazing reaction from Joker because it looked like he was really going to unload on him. And he showed some amazing restraint.
Yes.
Because that really hits home for a player like that.
He knew how far, I think, he was willing to go. He obviously knew or wanted to make the point that I can't just lay there. I'm going to have to get up and get in you. But you're right. I think he's also sensible enough to know I'm too important. There's only so far I can go. Let me squeeze in a real quick break to get caught up, Mitch. Yeah. Mitch Lawrence, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Texts are coming in. We'll get to a couple of those and get into a couple of other juicy NBA topics, like the question of, is there such a thing in the NBA as tanking responsibly? And is that now lost to a lot of irresponsible tanking? Stay tuned.
The 2026 MSHSL State Boys Hockey Tournament is here, and we're your rinkside destination for all of the action. You can catch all of the Class AA quarterfinal games today on KFAN Plus, presented by James Hardy, North America's #1 siding brand.
Mitch Lawrence is back with us as he waits patiently via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I had Sam Mitchell on right after the trade deadline. And I proposed something that had him calling me a blithering idiot. And as you know with Sam, he's going to give you your opinion. And my theory was that, as insane as it sounds on one level, I actually thought, I know that the Wolves were definitely trying to see if there was a path through which they could get Giannis. There's no question they were in that hunt. Ultimately, I think they decided Bucks don't really want to move him now, so we're out. But I actually yearned for the Wolves to try to acquire James Harden. Mitchell said, again, you're an idiot. You should know better than that. Why would you want him? Right. But I want to get your view on him because, again, it's water under the bridge, and I don't even know if there was a deal that would work for both sides. How much would you have to give up to get him? But I've come around on Harden, notwithstanding some of the playoff disasters, which we're aware of, to thinking that this form of Harden now appeals to me in a way that maybe previous forms have not. He's landed in Cleveland, gotten off to a really good start there. Where are you on the whole James Harden debate?
I'm on your side. And it's funny because when they made that trade, I was thinking, man, this is a big move, potentially a very good move for Cleveland because, first of all, he plays versus Darius Garland, who always has some sort of a toe problem.
That's true.
And he hardly ever plays. And he's a much better player when he does play. Now, your point about the playoffs, we all know, we've seen it.
Yeah.
And it seems like it always happens at the wrong time for James Harden. In an elimination game, in a deciding game, he'll disappear. And that is his legacy right now in a lot of ways. So, but I love what Cleveland did because I thought this could actually help them get through the East.
Yes.
And have a much more of a chance because, listen, I'm not a huge Donovan Mitchell guy. I'm kind of in the minority on this. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors more Donovan, especially in the playoffs. He's had some real playoff failures too, back in Utah and in Cleveland. And okay, he's a hell of a player. I understand that, but I thought if you brought James Harden in, that's going to take a lot of pressure off of Mitchell. And I think what it's also going to do is it's going to help get the best out of Evan Mobley because
Great
Evan
point.
Mobley now is, a lot of people say he has a tremendously high ceiling. Well, we haven't seen all that. We've seen it in kind of bits and flashes. We certainly haven't seen that in the playoffs. But if there's one guy who's a playmaker who can make big guys better, and we've seen it throughout with Harden, it is James Harden, whether he was in Houston, Clint Capella, with the Clippers. I like that move. Now, listen, the East is looking like it just got a lot harder for all the teams because Jason Tatum's coming back. And if Jason Tatum comes back and is effective and doesn't have setbacks, and he's the old Jason Tatum, well, they have now a number one scoring option / MVP caliber player they've added, which puts them above Detroit, which puts them above Cleveland, which puts them above New York. I mean, this thing with Jason Tatum, this could be the thing that really turns around the East in Boston's favor. If, of course, everything's fine with his Achilles. But, I mean, we'll see. But, no, I was bored. Now, Sam and other people are very much down on Harden, and it really has only to do with the biggest thing, and that's the playoffs. The playoff games where he just implodes.
I just think, again, here, I don't know what the configuration would have been, but I think here he'd know at this point he doesn't have to be the main guy. He's a great distributor. He can still score. I think Edwards would profit dramatically from what he might open up. But again, we will never know. Speaking quickly on the Celtics, the stat I saw, I think it was from your guy, Justin Termini, is in speaking to the Celtics run this year, the coaching that's been done, how the players have stepped up despite obviously the big loss, is that even in games where they didn't have Jaylen Brown, they were like 6-1, and their average margin of victory was like 20 points. It's amazing.
The other night when they're playing Milwaukee, Giannis's big return, Jaylen Brown didn't play. It was the second game of back-to-back. He had some sort of a non-COVID illness, so he didn't even make the trip. And they really just toyed with the Bucks. The Bucks looked like, Giannis looked like he didn't really want to be there. He looked at his situation like, I got to get out of here. The way he played, he still put up a double-double fine. But all these other Boston guys who nobody's really ever heard of, except if you're Justin Termini, a huge Celtic fan, they compete all the time, and they always bring it. And then they are just relentless, and that's credit to them. That's credit to Joe Mazzulla. It's been an amazing season. I hate what they did in terms of they moved guys like Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, not because they didn't like those guys, but because they had to get under the second apron.
Right.
And to me, there's nothing worse in sports than penalizing teams that have built quote unquote the right way and know what they're doing, and somehow making it more level, and kind of you're hurting that team and helping everybody else close the gap. It's an artificial thing. And Drew Holiday was a major loss. He's won a couple of titles. Kristaps helped, even though nobody can figure out what's wrong with him. It's still amazing to see. Nobody really knows. Boston's just been this incredible story. And for, Jaylen Brown over the last couple of months, I heard the stat recently where he is now kind of less efficient, more of a volume shooter. He needs help.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks it's his team. It's not his team. It's Jason Tatum's team. And Jason Tatum's going to be the one who's going to take them places if they're going anywhere this year. And I think Jason Tatum, besides having that Kobe mentality, Kobe was his guy and he loves to compete. I think Jason Tatum looks at the East and says, if I'm back with this team, we can get out of the East, because Detroit's never won a playoff series. The Knicks are still going to have problems without Thibodeau. Maybe Mike Brown isn't going to, we'll see what Mike Brown does in the playoffs, but they're still kind of, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns are one-way players. You don't win with that in the playoffs. Cleveland has James Harden. So why can't we, if I come back and play the last 20 games of the regular season and get on a bit of a roll, why can't we end up playing, Oklahoma City or Minnesota in the final? Right?
Last item for Mitch Lawrence for today. As you well know, the league implemented a minimum game rule when it comes to postseason awards at 65 games to discourage as much load management as possible. What we're seeing this year is, I think, some players legitimately hurt are among the biggest names, and they are approaching that threshold where they're not going to be able to get to 65 games. The reaction in the media community and some of the Jackals is, we overcorrected. This is ridiculous. The best players are not going to be receive the awards that they deserve, so we have to find a way to get rid of that minimum requirement. Where are you on that whole issue? Are you willing to live with it? Just this is a bad luck this year because of some of the names who happen to be coming close to that, or do you think the league did overreact a few years ago when they put that minimum requirement in?
Overreact because it was a joke. Guys were, sitting out games and nobody cared about the regular season. So, of course, if the players and teams don't care about the regular season, why should fans put down their hard-earned money and go to a regular season game? They don't know who's playing. So I know I think the league did what they had to do. Is it a fluke year? Maybe. We'll have to see. But I think this is still, you have to put the players' feet to the fire here.
I agree.
And ensure that when people are going to the arena, for the most part, they're going to see, the top players, because this goes back to, it's a superstar league, and that's who you're marketing, and that's who your TV contract is built around, and that's who fans want to see. They don't want to see backups and understudies and second and third stringers. I think the league still has to continue that, because the players' mentality to me is still, it's not like Jason Tatum, who loves the competition. He wants to be out there and he's hustling back after less than 10 months, on an Achilles tear. I think there's still guys who are like, you know what? Well, if I want, maybe I will play tonight, maybe I won't. And that's a problem, especially when it seeps into the top players in the league. That's not good.
That, by the way, is one of the strengths of the Wolves. They have been from the top. They've made it. They've proclaimed it. We are not a load management team. Edwards has been hurt more this year, but he's been hurt more. So they are, in fact, Randall hasn't missed a game yet this season. That's not why his whole career, but I do like that here. This is not one of the play. Edwards has talked about it over the years. I want to play and I'm going to play. And I do like that mentality was declared from Tim Conley on down. And I think, fans have to appreciate that. That's obviously what you're looking for. You've been around this a long time. That's what they're clamoring for.
You gotta, once the fans get turned off and they start thinking about, well, I'm going to spend my money somewhere else. Yeah. That's bad for the NBA. That's not good. And sometimes those fans don't return because they don't know if they can trust you. There's a trust issue there with the teams and players. And that's the worst thing you can have for a league. There are other worse things, tanking, integrity, yes. FBI, betting scandals, but that is a really bad look for a league if the fans all of a sudden say, hey, we don't know if these guys are going to play. Why should we invest our hard-earned money in them?
Good to catch up, my friend. Thanks. We'll be in touch.
Always.
Thanks,
all
man.
right. Thanks, Dan. Take care.
You too. Mitch Lawrence, you can hear him on Sirius XM NBA, basically their number one fill-in guy on a number of different shows, covered the league for decades, starting as a teammate of mine many, many moons ago at the Dallas Morning News, not related necessarily in that case to Bermuda shorts. Top five will include what? What do we have?
Wild Wolves injury news, and we'll go live to Grand Casino Arena for a high school hockey update.